Hi, I'm a gamer, and I like video games. Shocking, I know. Playing a video game is really fun. They can provide a unique experience compared to other forms of entertainment. They can immerse the player into a unique and complex story, or they can bring people together from around the world via online multiplayer. But you know what's just as good, if not better, than a released game you can play right now? How about an unreleased game that makes you wait 30 years before you can play it? Yeah, that's what we're talking about today. Video games are crazy difficult to make. I mean, just ask Valve. Because of the amount of work that goes into a video game's programming, 3D modeling, writing, acting, music, and so much more, new game projects can often take years, maybe even decades to complete. And for the businessmen running the operation, waiting years for a new product to hit the shelves can be excruciating, not just for loyal fans, but also investors who want to see new products and new profits. Because of this, it has become regular practice in the video game industry to announce upcoming games during development in order to drum up interest and attention. Basically every game nowadays gets announced ahead of time, whether it's a huge blockbuster game from a major developer or a small indie title shown off in a short little trailer in an indie presentation. Announcing new games in development has become standard practice in the video game industry, and for fans, the announcement of a new video game can be incredibly exciting or excruciatingly disappointing. Being there as a fan for the announcement of a game can give you a sense of connection with the product, like you were there to see its reveal. You've been looking forward to this game since then. Even if it turns out disappointing, you feel a sense of connection already because you've been invested in following the development of this project. It's like going to a wedding. The marriage may end up in a custody case, but hey, at least you were dedicated enough to see it play out from the beginning. However, not all game reveals are created equal, so let's dive into a few game reveals throughout history to see what's worked and what makes me vomit.
Sometimes it doesn't just work.
In my opinion, Fallout 76 was one of the most botched video game reveals in recent memory. Everything about this reveal was terrible, and it almost single-handedly tanked Bethesda's reputation. It all started a week before Bethesda's E3 press conference, when they decided to drop a teaser trailer announcing a new Fallout game coming soon titled Fallout 76. That's it. The trailer basically showed nothing of the actual game, just the interior of Vault 76, and that's the problem. Fallout 76 is not a traditional Fallout game. It's an online-only version of the Fallout formula. Nothing about this trailer hints at the fact that this is not a traditional Fallout game. In fact, if anything, it's intended to rope in fans of traditional Fallouts by purposely saying nothing, then letting them assume it was a traditional RPG. Now, to be fair, the idea of an online Fallout isn't an objectively awful idea, but what made it so scummy was that by releasing an incredibly vague trailer and giving it a name and box art so similar to mainline entries in the series, it feels like they were purposely trying to trick people into thinking it was a normal Fallout game. Well, E3 2018 finally comes around, and with it, Todd Howard finally spills the beans on the fact that this was an online entry in the Fallout franchise. And that was about the only truthful thing he said during the entire presentation. Todd Howard, the man notorious for over-exaggerating his games prior to release, lied about basically every aspect of Fallout 76, promising 16 times the detail and 4 times the map size compared to Fallout 4. Yeah, sure. Heck, he didn't even say it was an online game until about a third of the way through the presentation. I'm not going to go too in-depth on the press conference because honestly, that's been done to death at this point. If you really want to hear about it, just look it up on YouTube. The point is that while something like No Man's Sky or Cyberpunk 2077 probably misled customers more than Fallout 76, Bethesda was trying to manipulate Fallout fans ever since the first teaser, and that makes it, to me, one of the worst reveals in the past decade. Alright, so now that we talked about a bad video game reveal, I want to talk about one of the greatest ever. The reveal of The Legend of Zelda Twilight Princess at E3 2005. But first, some context. Ever since the GameCube was first revealed at Space World 2000 alongside a now infamous tech demo showcasing what a realistic Zelda game could look like on the hardware, fans have been clamoring for a darker and grittier take on the 3D Zelda formula. By 2005, the only 3D Zelda game on the GameCube was Wind Waker, which was good, but it was about as gritty as a box of crayons. Cut to a few years later, and Nintendo is wrapping up their E3 press conference when Reggie pulls out the old one more thing trick. Suddenly, Conan the Barbarian music starts playing over the speakers, and a horse is seen riding across a field. Suddenly, the camera cuts to a close-up of the rider, a realistic Link holding the Master Sword, and the entire crowd loses their minds. Finally, the Legend of Zelda logo is flashed on the screen, and Shigeru Miyamoto proudly comes out on stage wielding a Master Sword and Hylian shield. What makes this reveal so great, aside from just the audience's reaction, is that it is clear that Nintendo knew what they had. I think this is a very common element in a lot of great video game reveals. It is always apparent when a company knows what they have in their hands is special, and thus they try to make the reveal as exciting as possible. Nintendo obviously kept the reveal at the end on purpose. They knew that showing flashes of Hyrule, alongside Conan the Barbarian music, would let the audience in on the surprise before Link finally came to frame. Then once he was fully shown, the rest of the trailer focused on him, because they knew that the audience would want to see him in action more than anything. Finally, you have Miyamoto proudly coming on stage, sword and shield in hand, and you have yourselves one of the greatest video game announcements of all time. Nintendo over the years has had some fantastic reveals, Twilight Princess probably being one of, if not their best. They've also had some garbage ones. This is one of the garbage ones. I love Nintendo. I love seeing a new Nintendo Direct come around every once in a while. In fact, I was very tempted to talk about a bunch of awesome Nintendo reveals over the years. Instead, I decided to talk about probably their worst. If you've watched any of Scott the Waz's videos, you know that Nintendo was doing terribly from 2015 to 2016. The Wii U was dying a slow and painful death, the 3DS was the only thing keeping them above water, and they began to misuse a lot of their franchises due to lower budgets and development times, and simply trying to appeal to a casual audience. During this time, Nintendo released such duds as Star Fox Zero, Animal Crossing Amiibo Festival, Chibi Robo Ziplash, and of course, Paper Mario Color Splash. Paper Mario has always been a franchise that's gained a cult following that Nintendo just refuses to listen to. Ever since the release of what's widely considered by many to be humanity's magnum opus, aka Thousand Year Door, the series has shifted away from traditional RPG gameplay and more towards wacky paper gimmicks. Enter stage left, Color Splash. Now I should note that I myself haven't gotten into the Paper Mario series, so I can't say anything definitive about the quality of any of the games, but I can say for certain that this reveal was terrible. They threw the trailer in the middle of a Nintendo Direct, made Bill Trinen open the trailer up with a dumb paper joke,
Paint the town red, and just about every other color.
called Paper Mario an action-adventure series, and barely showed any of the combat. And then they moved on to Pokken like it was nothing. This reveal was the exact opposite of Twilight Princess. Nintendo had no idea what Paper Mario was, and this reveal reeked of that ignorance. For a non-fan of Paper Mario like myself, there was no reason to care, and from what I've heard from actual fans of Paper Mario, this reveal was a shot through the heart. To be fair, Color Splash did receive decent reviews, but a lot of people still want a return to form for the Paper Mario franchise. And personally, I've never gotten the series because I'd rather play a real RPG compared to a gimmicky and dumbed down one like Color Splash. Alright, so we've established that a bad reveal doesn't always equal a bad game. Color Splash certainly is divisive, but I've never heard anybody downright call it a bad game. Now, I want to talk about a very rare case in the world of video game reveals. A great reveal that turned out to be a terrible game. Death Stranding was the long-anticipated brand new IP from Hideo Kojima's new studio, Kojima Productions. After Kojima's messy breakup with Konami, he left to form his own studio, and just 1 year later, at Sony's E3 2016 press conference, he revealed his new game, Death Stranding. Death Stranding was one of the most fascinating games to follow prior to release, because we knew basically nothing about it for years. Over the course of 3 years, we got only snippets of detail at a time from different trailers, and the whole game became sort of a mystery. Every trailer would show more and more weird elements from the game's story, and we were left to piece together what the project could be ourselves, which is something I don't think I've ever seen with any other project, especially a new IP. Looking back on the build-up to the game's release, and the backlash following the inevitable release date when everyone realized what the game actually was, I really missed the suspense and intrigue back when we didn't know exactly what the game was going to be about. This is one of the few games where I can think of that the build-up to the release was more fun than the actual game itself. I think the moral of all of this is that while a reveal doesn't make or break a game, they are very interesting to discuss and can often give you insight into the games, companies, and series behind them. However, in the end, the reason why so many gamers like myself tune into these reveals is because they're fun to watch. So please, if you have any personal favorite game reveals or least favorite game reveals, keep them to yourself because I really don't care. Now I gotta get going, so please get out of my room.